Japan, a country where ancient traditions blend seamlessly with cutting-edge technology, where bullet trains glide past centuries-old temples, and where the concept of work isn't just a job. It's a way of life, a cultural identity, sometimes even a path to death. In the heart of the Kansai region, about 40 minutes by train from the bustling metropolis of Osaka, lies the small city of Ikoma. Nestled between rolling hills covered in bamboo forests and traditional Japanese homes with curved tile roofs, Ikoma represents the perfect balance between rural charm and modern convenience. The city is quiet, peaceful, the kind of place where elderly residents still bow politely to strangers, and where the loudest sound at night is the distant hum of vending machines that line every street corner. Japan's work culture is legendary, and not always in a good way. The term karoshi, death from overwork, is uniquely Japanese. It describes the phenomenon where salarymen work themselves into the grave. 12-hour days are normal. 16-hour days are common. Some workers sleep at their desks rather than go home, only to wake up and continue working. In a country where conformity is valued above individuality, where group harmony supersedes personal needs, and where the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. There are consequences for those who work too hard, too long, too obsessively. Sometimes, those consequences extend beyond death itself. Months ago, I thought I had won the lottery of life. Fresh out of UC, San Diego with a degree in East Asian Studies, and a head full of dreams about experiencing real Japan, I had been accepted into the JET program. At 26, I was older than most of the other alts, having taken a few gap years after college to save money and work on my Japanese language skills. I had studied Japanese for 4 years, watched countless anime, read manga, and devoured every piece of Japanese culture I could get my hands on. I thought I understood Japan. I thought I was prepared. I was wrong on both counts. The reality of life in Japan hit me like a bullet train. The language barrier was more intense than I had anticipated. The culture shock was overwhelming. Everything from how to properly sort garbage to the complex social hierarchies in the workplace felt like navigating a minefield. Blindfolded, I was assigned to Ikoma Municipal Elementary School. The kids were adorable, curious about the tall, brown-haired Geiko-kyujin, who spoke their language with a heavy American accent. But teaching English to Japanese children while communicating with Japanese teachers in broken Japanese was exhausting in ways I never expected. The loneliness was the worst part. Despite being surrounded by people all day, I felt isolated. My apartment was a tiny one-room space, barely large enough for a bed and a small table. I had no friends, no social life, and no real connection to the community around me. Money was tight, too. By my 3rd month in Japan, I realized I needed a part-time job. That's how I found myself standing outside the FamilyMart convenience store on a rainy Tuesday evening in October, clutching a hastily written resume in broken Japanese, hoping to convince the manager to hire a clumsy foreigner who could barely operate a Japanese cash register. The store was typical of what you'd expect from a Japanese convenience store. Bright, almost blindingly white fluorescent lights illuminated rows of perfectly organized products. The familiar blue, green, and orange FamilyMart logo glowed warmly against the dark street outside. The manager, a soft-spoken man in his 50s named Tanaka-san, looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. His English was limited, but better than my Japanese. "You want work here?" he asked slowly, examining my resume with a puzzled expression. "Hi, yes," I replied, mixing English and Japanese in my nervousness. "I need money for living expenses. I can work hard." He studied me for a long moment, then asked the question that would change my life. "You can work night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I didn't hesitate. "Yes, no problem. Night shift is different," he said, his expression darkening slightly. "Very quiet, sometimes strange customers, but foreigners usually okay. You start tomorrow." As I walked home that night, rain pattering against my umbrella, I felt a surge of excitement. I had a job. I would have extra money. I could finally start building a real life in Japan. I had no idea what I was actually signing up for. My first night at FamilyMart was exactly what Tanaka-san had promised. Quiet and easy. I arrived at 10:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, because punctuality is sacred in Japan. The evening shift worker, a college student named Akiko, spent 30 minutes showing me the basics. "Remember," Akiko said as she prepared to leave, "always say irashimasu when customers enter. Always bow. And if you have problems, call Tanaka-san." She paused at the door, then turned back with an odd expression. "Emma-san, if strange customers come late at night, just serve them normally. Don't ask questions. Don't try to help too much. Just do the transaction and let them leave." "Strange how?" I asked. But she was already gone, disappearing into the night like she couldn't wait to escape. The first few hours passed peacefully. I restocked shelves, learning the locations of hundreds of products with names I couldn't pronounce. Around 1 a.m., a few customers trickled in salarymen in rumpled suits, buying coffee and cigarettes. A teenager purchasing energy drinks. An elderly woman selecting ingredients for what looked like a late dinner. Each interaction was a small victory. My Japanese was clumsy, but the customers were patient. I was starting to feel confident. Then 3 a.m. arrived. The automatic doors slid open with their familiar chime, and a woman entered. She was in her 30s, dressed in a black business suit despite the late hour. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and she moved with the mechanical precision of someone following a well-practiced routine. But something was wrong with her. Her skin was pale, not just pale, but gray, like old paper. Dark circles ringed her eyes, so deep they looked like bruises. She didn't acknowledge me, didn't respond to my cheerful irascimes. She simply walked directly to the onigiri section, selected a salmon rice ball, then moved to the drinks cooler and grabbed a bottle of green tea. She approached the counter with the same mechanical movements, placed the items down without looking at me, and set exact change on the counter. Her fingers were ice cold when they briefly brushed mine during the transaction. Arigatou gozaimasu, I said automatically. She didn't respond. She picked up her items and walked out, moving with that same robotic precision. The entire interaction had taken less than 2 minutes, but it left me with a deep sense of unease. 20 minutes later, another customer entered, a man this time also in a business suit, also with that same gray pallor and those dark, sunken eyes. Same routine, salmon onigiri, green tea, exact change, no conversation. He left as silently as he had arrived. By 4 a.m., I had served 6 of these strange customers, all business people, all buying the same items, all with that unsettling gray skin and vacant stare. None of them spoke a single word beyond placing their order. When my shift ended at 7 a.m., I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with being awake all night. There was something deeply wrong about those customers, something that made my skin crawl even thinking about them. I mentioned it to Tanaka-san when he arrived to open the store for the morning shift. "Ah," he said, his expression immediately becoming guarded. The 3 a.m. customers. They all looked so sick. Should I call someone a doctor? "No," he said firmly, more firmly than I had ever heard him speak. "Never call anyone about them. They are regular customers. Very important to treat them normally. Just serve them and let them go." His tone made it clear the conversation was over. But the look in his eyes, fear, maybe, resignation, told me there was much more to the story. As the weeks passed, the late-night routine became familiar, but no less unsettling. Every night, between 3 and 4 a.m., they would come. Sometimes 3 or 4, sometimes as many as 10. Always the same gray-skinned business people. Always the same purchase. Always the same silence. I started keeping a mental count. In 3 weeks, I had served over 60 of these strange customers. But here's the thing that really bothered me. I never saw any of them outside the store. In a small city like Ikoma, you tend to recognize faces. You see the same people at the train station, at other shops, walking down the street. But these gray customers seem to exist only in the FamilyMart between 3 and 4 a.m. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to watch where one of them went after leaving the store. A woman in a navy blue suit had had just purchased her usual items and was walking toward the door. I quickly moved to the window to track her path. She walked across the parking lot toward the street, her movements still mechanical and strange. But as she reached the edge of the parking lot's light, she simply wasn't there anymore. Not like she had turned a corner or gotten into a car. She had been walking in a straight line across open pavement, and then she was gone. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I had dozed off while standing. But the cash register showed the transaction. The onigiri and tea were missing from inventory. She had definitely been there. The next night, I tried recording one of the interactions with my phone. A man in a brown suit entered at 3:17 a.m., went through his routine, and left. But when I checked the video afterward, it showed me standing behind the counter, apparently serving no one. The cash register moved by itself. The products floated off the shelf. Money appeared on the counter from thin air, yet I could see them as clearly as I could see my own hands. I began to research obsessively during my free time. I scoured Japanese websites, forums, and urban legend collections, looking for any mention of strange convenience store customers. Then I found a blog post from a former FamilyMart worker in Tokyo. The title roughly translated to the customers who buy nothing but work. The post described exactly what I was experiencing. Gray-skinned people in business attire, always buying the same items, never appearing on security cameras, only showing up in the early morning hours. The blogger called them Zangyu no Rei, overtime spirits. According to the post, they were the ghosts of people who had died from karoshi, death from overwork. Their lives had been so consumed by routine, by the endless cycle of work and minimal rest, that even death couldn't break their habits. They continued going through the motions of their previous lives, working, buying convenient meals, working more. They don't know they're dead, the blog post continued. Their consciousness is stuck in the loop of their final weeks of life. They buy food they'll never eat, for jobs they'll never return to. The post ended with a chilling warning. If you work the same hours they did, if you follow the same patterns they followed, you risk becoming one of them. Night shift workers are especially vulnerable. I had been working the night shift for over a month. I was eating the same convenience store food. My sleep schedule was completely destroyed. I barely saw daylight anymore. Was I becoming like them? The answer to that question came crashing down on me during my 6th week at the store. It was a particularly busy night, unusual for the late shift. I had served the normal selection of gray customers around 3 a.m., but around 4:30, more started arriving. Not just 3 or 4, but a steady stream. They filled the store, moving in that same mechanical way. But this time, they weren't just buying onigiri and tea. They were wandering the aisles, picking up random items, staring at products with those empty, black eyes. And for the first time, since I had started working there. One of them spoke to me. "You work late hours," the figure said. It was a woman, probably in her 40s, wearing a faded business suit that looked like it hadn't been changed in weeks. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "Good," she continued, her voice hollow and echoing. "Work is important. Must work harder. Must work longer." Other gray figures began to gather around the counter. A man in a tie that hung crooked. A woman with a briefcase clutched to her chest. An older man whose suit jacket was buttoned wrong. "You understand dedication," another one said. "You work when others sleep. You sacrifice rest for money," added a third. "Like us," they said in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. Like us. The temperature in the store dropped noticeably. My breath became visible in small puffs. The fluorescent lights above began to flicker, casting weird shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. "I'm just working part-time," I said, backing away from the counter. "This isn't my career. Part-time becomes full-time," one of them replied. "Full-time becomes overtime. Overtime becomes..." Forever, they finished together. They began to move closer, and I could see them more clearly than ever before. Their skin wasn't just gray, it was translucent, like old plastic. Dark veins were visible beneath the surface. Their eyes weren't black, they were empty, like looking into deep holes. "Join us," they whispered. "Work with us, forever." I ran. I bolted toward the back room, slamming the door behind me. But I could hear them on the other side, their voices growing louder, more insistent. "Cannot run from work," they chanted. "Work follows you home. Work follows you to sleep. Work follows you to death." The door handle began to turn. That's when I remembered what the blog post had mentioned about salt. In Japanese folklore, salt purifies and protects against evil spirits. There was a container of salt in the back room that we used for cleaning. I grabbed it and poured a circle around myself just as the door opened. The gray figures began to enter, but they stopped at the edge of the salt circle, unable to cross. "Temporary protection," one of them hissed. "But you must come out eventually. You must work tomorrow night, and the next, until you become like us," another added. "Until work is all you know." That's when Tanaka-san burst through the back door, holding a handful of what looked like paper charms, amamori from a local shrine. "Emma-san," he shouted. "Stay in the salt circle." He began chanting in rapid Japanese, waving the charms at the gray figures. They recoiled, their forms becoming less solid, more like smoke. "We will wait," they said as they began to fade. "We are very patient. Night shift changes everyone, eventually." When they were gone, Tanaka-san collapsed into a chair, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cold. "How long?" I asked, my voice shaking. "How long what? How long has this been happening?" He sighed deeply. 15 years. Ever since the first night worker died here. Sato-san. Worked 3 jobs, slept 3 hours a night. Heart attack right at this counter at 3:47 a.m. Then Suzuki-san, 5 years later. Same thing, then others. They keep coming back. Their routine was so strong, death couldn't break it. They don't understand they're gone, and they want others to join them to validate their choice. Why didn't you warn me? Foreign workers usually quit before it becomes a problem. They don't understand our work culture, so the spirits can't relate to them. But you, he looked at me with pity. You stayed too long. You adapted too well. They see you as one of them now. I quit that night. Didn't even finish my shift. I threw my uniform at Tanaka-san, grabbed my bag, and walked out of that FamilyMart forever. But quitting the job wasn't enough to escape them. For the next week, I could feel them watching me. Shadows in my peripheral vision. The sound of the store's door chime echoing in my apartment at 3 a.m. I would wake up to find convenience store receipts on my nightstand, purchases I never made, for items I never bought. My Japanese coworkers at the elementary school began to comment on how tired I looked, how pale I had become. I was losing weight, losing sleep, losing my grip on reality. The final straw came on a Friday night. I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep despite the anxiety that had become my constant companion, when I heard voices outside my window. Emma-san, they called in that hollow, echoing tone. Time for work. Your shift starts soon. I looked out the window. They were there, dozens of them, standing in the parking lot of my apartment building, all looking up at my window with those empty, black eyes. You cannot escape work, they chanted. Work is eternal, join us. That's when I made the decision that saved my life. I called the JET program coordinator and told them I was having a family emergency. I booked a flight back to California for the next day. I packed everything I could fit in 2 suitcases and left the rest behind. As my plane lifted off from Kansai International Airport, I felt a weight lift from my chest. I was escaping. I was going home. But even now, 6 months later, living back in San Diego, working a normal 9 to 5 job with weekends off and vacation time, I still feel their influence. Every night at 3 a.m., I wake up. Sometimes I hear that familiar door chime. Sometimes I crave salmon onigiri and green tea, foods I never even liked in Japan. And sometimes, when I'm walking past a convenience store late at night, I see them in the windows, watching, waiting. The work culture of Japan is powerful, and for some people, it transcends death itself. They worked themselves into the grave, and now they want others to join them in their eternal routine. If you ever find yourself working nights in Japan, if you see customers who don't appear on security cameras, if you encounter the gray people who buy the same things every night, don't interact with them. Don't stay in that job too long. And whatever you do, don't let them convince you that work is is more important than life, because once you join their routine, you'll never be able to leave. The night shift never ends.